Hello! By some strange surprise, we actually have a product to look at today, and it's from Jumper. But just before we get into that, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find that little bell icon, click on it, it'll tell you when I'm uploading stuff. So what we have here is a Jumper T12 Pro radio. And the reason I wanted to look at this is because when people say what radio should I use, honestly I'm not sure. Not so long ago I would have said the Taranis. The Taranis is the thing to use. It's great. It's got OpenTX, it's got loads of switches, it's got nice gimbals, it's all good. My daily radio for flying quads is generally the Taranis X-Lite, and lately I've been using the this is the Taranis, I think this is called the X9 Lite. This is the new one, but this is where it started to go a bit weird because this is Access, and Access means it can do D16 but it drops D8. It's changed the JR compatible expansion with this little sort of low profile thing, and FrSky then brought out this new firmware which basically would stop it working with third-party D16 providers, like if you were using a Whoop and it had an SPI receiver. And then we've got the whole thing about, you know, they've tried to block crossfire and stuff, so I kind of struggle a little bit about what radio should I suggest to people, because I'm quite concerned the way FrSky is going, that they really are misstepping about how they're treating their users and their sort of future users. I don't think they're playing nicely with the community, so I thought, is Jumper going to be the radio to look at? So I thought I'd take a look at one and see. So we've got the T12 Pro. It's quite a budget radio, coming in at under £100. I think it's about 94 or something if you buy it in the UK. So let's take it out of the box. I haven't really looked at this yet, and we'll see what we get. This, by the way, it came today. This was all shrink wrapped, so I was able to take the shrink wrap off and wash my hands thoroughly, and then I was not concerned because the box has been on its way for over a week, so hopefully it's virus free. Anyway, there are a few bits that fell out when I just got it out of the box. There's a Jumper neck strap. There is a quick start guide, but I do notice it's for the T12 rather than the T12 Pro. And there is this little battery container. This is set up for 18650s. And then you've got this all in plastic, which I'm going to remove because it's pretty loud. Then in here we've got this little plastic piece which is labelled as Sound Chamber DIY. I do not know what that is. A USB lead, a spring, a little plastic thing, and a screw. I guess this is for perhaps changing over from mode 2 to mode 1 or adjusting some tension somewhere. This is mode 2, and I believe this is the Hall effect sensor style. And the difference, I believe, I've not had the T12, but I think the difference between this one and the T12 is this has a, I think the T12 had a multi-protocol module in the back. This is built in, so the module bay is absolutely free. This is just a little dummy. And it's got USB charging for the battery bay that would go in here. You can see we've got the place to put the USB card. You've got a little port there for plugging this in, or it will take a LiPo between, I think, 5 and 9 volts. That's suggested a 2S. So for the charging port, I'm presuming you need to use the 18650 to do the charge. I couldn't find any documentation on it, rather than just having a LiPo in there. So first impressions, it's quite small. It feels quite small in my hands. I'll show this compared to the modern FrSky, the Taranis. I think this is the X9 Lite, I can't remember, or this is the original Taranis X9D, which feels not only bigger but a lot heavier. So this is at least going to sit nice in your hand. Gimbal wise, feels pretty good. I'm just trying to work out if the sticks feel a little bit small, or I think they're going to be okay. I'll be able to check that soon. We've got little sliders on the side there. They're very smooth actually, I quite like those. Then we've got 2 position switches on the top. And then 4 3 position switches here. And we've got sort of joystick here, enter, return, trims, and a power button. Apparently this one comes with OpenTX loaded, and we've got USB here and training port here. We've got an inbuilt antenna here, which does actually unscrew, which is quite nice, so that can be replaced. I'm not sure if small is better in this sort of sense. I mean, I really do enjoy the low profile factor of this one, but I did have to use stick extensions to get it up to a point where I liked it. So I'd be interested to see how this goes. Anyway, I'm going to pop some batteries in and I'm going to turn it on and see what there is. As I said, this should be already flashed with OpenTX ready to go, so it should pretty much bind to anything and we'll be able to do stuff with it. So let's get it powered on and see. Okay, so here's the radio a bit closer up so you can see it. We've got this nice sort of carbon fibre type wrap on it, obviously not the real thing. It feels much smaller than my normal Taranis radio, but quite easy in the hands. What I've done, I've gone ahead and put in a couple of bits. Underneath here, we've got the battery compartment. I've got two 18650s in there. I've put in the SD card there, and I've got this standard 2.3 sound pack on. So first thing to say about this, I mentioned how big it is before, and it really is a lot smaller than your regular Taranis. This is my X9D, and it feels like a real heavyweight in comparison. It's much heavier, much more bulky. It's a little bit subjective. Some people like a larger sort of radio in their hands. Because I've been flying a lot with the little X-Lite, I'm finding this smaller form factor with just easy to move my thumbs around really quite nice right now. Probably if you're sort of replacing radio, the X9D, you might not go to this. You might go to something like the T12 Pro, which is sort of a flashier colour display, lots more switches and knobs, just a bit more fancy. I would say this is an entry-level radio, but certainly very capable in what it can do. So somewhere like where you might be getting something like the X7 or one of the new X9 lights. So I talked about you've got the SD card there and the battery port at the bottom. Up the top here you've got the trainer port and you've got the USB port. Wasn't sure about this USB port. I thought, why have they put it there? But actually, it's a pretty good spot. Was when I'm playing on a simulator or just have it loaded, I often have it like this. And out the back it could poke into things, and down below it could poke into things. Actually working quite well out the back. Now that charges these 18650 batteries I've got in as well. I couldn't find any documentation about what it should charge. I presume it's just a charging circuit for the 18650s. You can put like a 2S LiPo in there, but I don't know about the charging there. I'll try and find out more when I can. Anyway, let's turn this on.
Welcome to OpenTX.
And it's all very, very recognisable if you're used to OpenTX radios. One thing that kind of screwed me up a little bit was the fact that the button layout seemed oh so slightly different, just a little bit different, but enough just to hold me back. Basically, you've got the enter, back, and then you've got the directional keys, and these also work as sort of shortcuts for sort of if you hold it down, you go to the models there, hold up, and you'll go to stats. I think down is telemetry and left is the radio setup. Now out of the box, you probably can't see it on camera here, but I found this display a little bit overly bright. It seems to have, you can just kind of see sort of LEDs under there that are lighting up, and it was sort of washing the colours out a bit. So I've knocked down the brightness, I've set the date. That's about all I did. You see, it came with model memory 1. I've set up myself a sim and 2 other models. Obviously, I'm developing my own sim, if you saw a bunch before. So one of the first things I did was plug in and try that. And I have to say, it was really nice. When I first used the sticks, I was a bit, I don't know, they're not as big and solid feeling as the Taranis. And I was like, are these going to be too light and plasticky? But they are really smooth. I really like that. They really did respond well. These are Hall sensor gimbals. I think I've got that right. And when Model 2 is basically, I connected to a D16 receiver that was connected to a flight controller to check out exactly how much jitter we had and how well the gimbals came back to center at 1500 USEC, and they did very well. So I just bound this up to a receiver, which I've got in Betaflight now, and I was quite impressed with the lack of jitter. If you'll see my Betaflight controls go back and forth, and if I actually show you what's there on the screen, you'll see they go straight back pretty accurately, and they generally do not jitter about, which I think is pretty cool. Also, this filming angle is just not working, is it? So I mentioned I use D16, and what this has in it is an internal multi-module. So this is just a little blanking plate. We can take that out. So this is equivalent to a video I did before about using this little module, which went in there, or there's many other multi-protocol modules. The only difference being you won't have to open this up, solder a bunch of wires to it to flash the right bootloader. So if you wonder what that means for multi-protocol modules, go and watch that video. But what you got in here in the internal RF module is, here you've got multi, and it's either multi or it's off, simple as that. And just like before, you've got loads and loads of sub things and types. I mean, the big ones: DSM, FlySky and FrSky. And on FrSky, oops, where are we? There we go. And on FrSky, as I mentioned, I used D16. And of course, the good thing about here is, aside from D16, you'll get D8, which you won't get on the later FrSky radios. D16 8-channel V8, which is an old type receiver, and then you get the LBT, and LBT 8 channels. So you don't have to think about what region you're in, you're just pretty much good to go on that. Now, the other thing we kind of knocked FrSky for was basically making their new radios. Like most of the QX7s out there didn't work very well with the Crossfire module unless you did an internal mod here or you changed it so everything worked a bit slower. This shouldn't be the case with this one. So for example, I've gone on to model 2 here. Let's go to model 3, which I just literally set this one up. So what I want to do with this one is check out how it would work on external modules. And if we look in the external modules, we've got the choice of PPM, which is just, you know, putting a PPM signal out, XJT, which is the XJT module for FrSky, DSM2, which is a module for Spectrum, CRSF, which is the Crossfire module, multi, which we can put an external multi-protocol module if we want to, and R9M, and S-Bus, which is all interesting. Now, one quick point here, you're probably wondering, well, why would you put, where are we, an XJT module out there? Well, aside from the fact it's plain old OpenTX and it doesn't know what internal module you've got, one of the things you can't do with the multi-protocol module is if you use an LR9 or LR12 receiver. These are the long-range receiver. I use them on a couple of my planes, which will handle about 5 kilometers on a 2.4 signal. Nothing seems to do that at the moment, so if you want to do that, you would need the XJT module to support that still. I don't know if anybody's reverse engineering these or that's in the works or what, but that's worth knowing about. So it's obviously, most of us in the country and mostly the world are a bit locked down at the moment. But what I intend to do is bind this up to a couple of things to see how it will fly. For actual flying, where I can sort of use the controls and really see how it goes, I've got my little Tiny Hawk S. I can take that just downstairs and into the garden. Then what I'd like to do, although I could just really hover in the garden, is try out my Crossfire module and my R9M module and just check that all works okay with the existing models I've got. Now, I'm not sure about these. It'd be an interesting check as well about, do I have to rebind when I'm using something that's already bound to these modules? I'm not sure if it binds to the radio combination with the module or just the module itself, but I'll soon find out when I try it. So will I have to rebind, yes or no? Let's see. Okay, so quick update. We've got the Crossfire in the pack. Took a little bit of wiggling to get in there. The pins weren't quite lined up. The thing the Crossfire module doesn't do as well as the FrSky module is its connectors, where the FrSky has slightly larger round sort of sockets to go into. It's a bit tighter on the Crossfire micro module. Anyway, all you get here is of course CRSF. It's mostly done through the app. What I found though, I did not have to go and rebind. So let me show you how you get to the app here. You go to radio setups and then we've got the Crossfire config already. I'll just turn the quad on. Got a nice green light there, and just like doing a regular thing. We've got access to the Micro TX here through the Lua script. We can go to the Micro RX, and we've got various gubbins there we can mess around with. If you've set up Crossfire before, you'll know this. If you've not looked at it, I've got a video. I'll put a little thingy up in the thing here so you can have a look. But yeah, what was nice is I didn't have to rebind. I obviously went back into Betaflight and make sure that this config looked identical to the other, but I should just be able to swap between radios. So I'm just going to try and take it out for a quick hover, make sure it works okay, and come back and look at the next one. Alright, so hopefully this is in view. Let's arm it. Well, that was good. It's not much of a range, just admittedly, but we do get to telemetry. So if I unplug this,
Telemetry lost.
so just the same as flying any other Crossfire, really. Cool. Next. Okay, we're back again, and we've got the R9M module in the back, and there's a slight issue here. It's sort of allowable, but here's what we got. When we go and use the R9, we've got the option between R9 FCC and R9 EU, and each one of those has different limitations. Like in the EU, you only get channels 1 to 8. With RF power, you can go from 25 to 200 to 500 with no telemetry, and if you go to the FCC or the US version, you can go 10, 100, 500 and one more auto. What's missing from this is the one I use, which is the Flex. Now, the reason this isn't here is because it hasn't been compiled in. If we go and look what's actually been compiled into this particular version of OpenTX, you can see it under firmware options. Crossfire, International Multi-Module, LUA-C. So we're missing an option called Flex R9M. So this is just a case of hooking it up to OpenTX and updating the firmware with that option in there. I don't want to do it on this particular video. I'm going to come back because I don't have that many radios that I set up from scratch before. So I thought I'd do a bunch of tutorials about how I set a radio up from the get-go, what I do, and this is why I've got the standard voices at the moment. People always ask me about where I get the voices. There's no special graphics, all that sort of stuff. I was going to come back and do this later. So as far as the R9M goes, I'm sure it's fine. However, I'm going to go Flex. I'm going to come back in another video and I'll show you how I update OpenTX firmware on this to do that. Well, typically a glorious day where we can't go out properly, but at least we've got the Garda, we got the radio, we got the Tiny Hawk S, I think, can't remember. Let's fly around here. So the great news is about this radio is that flying it felt much the same as any of my other radios. So obviously the sticks are feeling right and they're the right sort of length for me, and that was good. Now, that said, I did have a couple of problems. Now, this has an SPI receiver, which doesn't have a brilliant range, but I wasn't expecting to lose signals so close in. So this is just behind myself, and just here, that's a loss of control signal. And I did another test just by taking it behind a wall here, again behind myself. That would have been okay generally, and it goes down again. So frustratingly, I can't test this out in a proper big field with a big receiver. And SPI receivers, you know, sneeze and they can lose a signal. So not quite sure what to make of that at this point. So aside from that issue I had with that SPI receiver, this was looking really good, and that's really frustrating. The problem with this lockdown, as far as testing things like this would go, what I would have done is taken a D16 receiver, taken it to a big field, fly it once with a regular FrSky radio, see how far it could get, or say like, can we get to 500 meters? Do the same with this and see how it compared. I can't really do that when I'm in my garden. I was flying a Crossfire 6 feet away. That's hardly a range test for it, is it? So that's a little bit of a question mark. I did go on and do a quick Google search just to look for range issues on the T12, and I couldn't find any overwhelming people that were saying there's a real range problem comparing to other stuff. So I'm thinking it's okay, but until the coronavirus is done and we're back to normal, I can't go and do a test to understand what the range of this is. So would I recommend it? Actually I would, and that's mostly because I think FrSky have just lost the plot so much. I mean, this thing, they were sending out letters telling people they couldn't, they wouldn't supply them with radios if they were going to continue selling the Jumper T16 and T12. Basically, FrSky said the T16 is copied from the Horus X10, this is a copy of the X7, therefore you can't sell it. And that's bad enough, although TBS did much the same thing when the R9 versus Crossfire was going on. So you won't find this everywhere, and you won't see it in the same place where they sell FrSky radios. Like I said, there's some subjective things here. I like the smaller size because it fits in my hands nicely, I can do stuff. But it's going to be sat on my desk operating a lot because when I'm doing development on the sim, I always need a radio here. And I've been actually using a gamepad because I can keep it plugged in and it will always charge as opposed to radios going out. So the fact this charges through USB is really handy to me. But yeah, obviously I want to do some proper full range testing when I can, but I can't right now. In the meantime, I'm going to be back and I'm going to do a series of OpenTX tutorials, not necessarily aimed at this radio, just aimed at OpenTX and how you would set up, but I'm going to use this one as my test subject, and thus if I find anything interesting or bad or whatever about it, I can update you then. But until then, this has been the Jumper T12 Pro, which was kindly supplied by HobbyCool. Thanks very much to them. And you can find links below to where you can check this out on their product page. Now, one of the questions you might be asking is, can you get stuff from China? Hasn't everything shut down? This got sent to me fairly quickly, but obviously check the stock situation. Although things are starting to get back to normal, products are starting to flow a bit better through China and, of course, over to us. Anyway, I hope that review's been helpful, and I'll catch you next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.